Hey, Larken Rose here. I'm still working on getting my book, How to Be a Successful Tyrant, back into print, second edition. But there's a tactic, a lot of it has to do with how if you don't accept the existence of sociopaths and people who don't at all have empathy for other human beings, then you aren't going to understand their games and you're going to fall for their crap. Like Mr. Smith says in Jones Plantation, to wield real power, you must be willing to do what most consider unthinkable. And it's totally true. And so you have a bunch of well-intentioned, basically decent people, and then you have the psychos playing their games. And if the well-intentioned people sort of project their goodness onto the people in power and think, well, they mean well, I might not like their policies, but they mean well. No, you're never going to understand them, and you're never going to stop their game. And I'm going to give an example today that is heinous and horrible to watch, but it's so predictable. I've said a million times that the only limit on the people in power is when their victims stop putting up with it and stop cooperating and maybe even openly resist. That's the only thing they care about. They don't care about protests. They don't care about votes. They don't care about anything that doesn't take their power away. And none of playing inside their game takes their power away. That's why the game is as it is. They designed it to be a way to waste your time and energy and accomplish nothing. So we have a fine example from the last few years of a thing I've talked about before. And I think it's something that most people don't want to think about. Because it kind of shows the depth of the psychopathy of some people in power. From the beginning of the COVID fear-mongering and shut things down and force everybody to do this and make everybody wear masks that don't do any good and so on and so forth, when all that crap was happening, very early on I said, this is remarkably stupid. This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen them do, because they're lying their butts off about things that the lie can't possibly last. The lie is going to fall apart. This is a short-term move from a ruling class that usually in the past has done a pretty good job of thinking long-term. And I mean, pretty good for their benefit and to the destruction of humanity. But they're usually more intelligent, evil, conniving, parasitic pieces of crap. And this looked really dumb to me. And I said, okay. And I predicted what they're going to do, because these lies are doomed to fall apart eventually. They'll do the lies, they'll get the power and the money they can out of it for now, and then piece by piece they'll admit, it turns out that this doesn't do that, and we were wrong about this. We meant well, but we just didn't understand. And it turns out the masks don't do anything. Turns out the shutdowns didn't help anybody at all and destroyed tons of people's lives. Did way more harm than good. In fact, didn't do any good. The masks didn't do any good. And the vaccines, aside from not being vaccines, we had to change the definition to pretend they're vaccines. They also aren't as useful as we pretended they were, and they do have bad side effects. So all these nasty things they knew from the beginning, and I said they knew from the beginning, and I said what they're going to do is lie their butt off, and then piece by piece later on they're going to go to do damage control. They're going to start to admit the truth piece by piece. It's not because they suddenly grew a conscience or ever gave a crap about the truth. It's because if a conniving sociopath knows that his lies are going to fall apart, it actually serves him better to start dropping out bits of the truth so it looks like it was his idea to tell pieces of the truth, and as if he just made a mistake and, now we have a better understanding and blah, 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 blah. So I was saying from the beginning that's what they're going to do, and then they did it over and over and over again. Now they've admitted pretty much every single piece of what I and others were saying from the very beginning, things that I got videos taken down for saying it, and they got suppressed, and other people got demonized, and their licenses revoked, and for saying things that now have been openly admitted by the mainstream. So here's the scary part that I think a lot of people don't want to think about. That was all by design. Now, I still think this whole thing they did was colossally stupid, because in the long term, they mostly punished their most loyal, blindly obedient, blindly believing dupes. They're the ones who got hit hardest by this authoritarian crap. So they punished their most loyal underlings, whereas the people who were just didn't believe them and didn't obey from the beginning did pretty well. So tactically, that's really stupid. It's sort of like being in charge of an army and shooting your own men for a while, while the other side just sits there going, why are you doing that? They did, short term, get money and power out of it. And here's the thing that most people don't want to think about. They knew it all from the beginning. They knew they were destroying people's lives. They knew they were endangering people's health. They knew they were going to kill children. They knew they were going to kill children. And they knew that eventually you would know they did. And they knew you're not going to do anything about it. And that's the only thing they care about. That is the only thing they care about. And if they leak the truth piece by piece and eventually tell everybody, oh, so it turns out this thing was never a threat to the kids, but our vaccines were. It's only a tiny number of, oh, now it's growing some. Well, it's only a this. Well, we're going to leak piece by piece. They knew it all, some of them at the top. There are a bunch of idiot dupes beneath them who were just mindlessly parroting whatever they were told to say. But at the top, there were people who knew the damage they were doing, and they didn't care. They got their money, and they got their power, and they knew that when the truth came out, you're not going to do anything about it. And that's all they care. It's like people can complain and whine and vote for somebody different in a few years, and it doesn't matter. We tortured and robbed and murdered some of these people, and they're going to put up with it, and they're not going to do anything about it. Not anything that makes any difference, and so we just don't care. It's like if somebody carjacks you and beats the crap out of you and shoots a couple of your neighbors and runs away. And you go out and say, that's horrible, blah, 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 and the truth comes out about what he did. He doesn't care. He's not the kind of person who cares. So you can protest and you can say he was bad and you can do whatever he wants. He still has your fucking car. They still have those billions and billions of dollars that were coerced out of the American people and coerced out of the whole world. Big Pharma still has that money that was coerced out of huge numbers of people, often by way of government robbing everybody and then handing over free loot to Big Pharma in exchange for a kickback. And by gradually letting the truth out after the fact, they knew that most people are going to go, oh, well, that's horrible. Some will even go, that's outrageous and unforgivable. Okay, well, if you're not going to forgive them, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to think about maybe voting for somebody different in 2 years. So nothing. The answer is you're going to do nothing. And they knew you were going to do nothing. Because this is the advantage that evil psychopaths have. They don't hesitate to use coercion and fraud and violence and outright murder. They don't hesitate to do any of that. But they know that good people are very hesitant to use force, especially deadly force, even when it's justified. Like I've said myself, I own guns, so I have the ability to kill people because I don't happen to hunt. I know lots of hunters, but I don't hunt. Someday I might hunt if I need to for food. But I own guns, so I have the ability to kill people. I really, 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 really hope I go my whole life without having to kill a person. Even if it's completely justified and it was my only recourse, and it's absolutely what I should have done, if I shoot and kill somebody, that's going to suck. Because I actually have empathy and I'm a human being and I don't want that to happen. Because there's always well, if it's a person, think of the potential of what they could have been if they didn't decide to be this. If their life didn't lead them to being this threat to me and my family that I have to shoot to protect ourselves. It's still sad to lose a human being because of what they could have been. And so if I'm ever put in that situation, I'm going to do what I have to do to defend the innocent, and it's going to suck if I have to take a human life. The parasitical evil bastards in power know that that's how most good people think. So they're very, very hesitant to use physical force. They're often too hesitant. And they'll wait too long and give an attacker too many warnings and too much leeway and too much of the benefit of the doubt, and then they get victimized. All those in power care about is whether you're going to do anything about it. And they know most people aren't going to. So that they can rob you blind, they can destroy millions of people's lives, they can kill a bunch of children right in front of your face. They did it right in front of your face. And they tortured children all over the place with the stupid mask crap that didn't do any good for anybody. And it definitely didn't do any good for children who have minimal, if any, symptoms, and the masks don't do any good anyway. So it was just, they tortured a whole bunch of children and then tried to guilt trip anybody who pointed out, this is unnecessary and stupid and counterproductive and horrible and evil. And they didn't care. And they know that even if they tortured your child, you're not going to do anything about it. And by anything, I mean anything that does any good. You can protest, you can vote, you can whine, you can condemn it, but they're still sitting on their pile of money. They're still sitting on their piles of power. All the politicians that got bought off to push this fear-mongering ridiculousness, they still have their money. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. Do you know what happens if you do nothing? They do it again. Just like any other thug. Any carjacker, if somebody complains and says, that was so wrong, and they're driving away in the car, what are they going to do the next day or next week or next month? Steal another car. There's no deterrent for them not to. Why wouldn't they do it again? The political parasites got an incomprehensible amount of money. Like the individuals got payoffs from big pharma and, kickbacks from all the horrible games they played. Tens of billions of dollars. Tens of billions of dollars. And I know people hear terms thrown around all over the place. That's 10,000s of millions of dollars, if you want to describe it that way, that got handed around as a result of this lying and fear-mongering and thuggery. Is any of that coming back? Well, we're going to sue Big Pharma. No, you're not, because the politicians passed a law that says you can't. What are you going to do about it? And they know. Now, I'm not even saying what people should do about it. I could say what I think is justified to do about it, which is not going to be pretty. Whether that would do any good? As long as people believe in government, you're going to have the power that somebody's going to use in a corrupt manner, because that's the only way you can use government power. They're going to use it to serve their interests and enrich themselves at the expense of everybody else's freedom and prosperity and health and life and everything else. But if you don't understand how they view the world, and that they really don't care, if it comes out that, turns out they made the thing and they lied about the mass doing it and they lied about this and they lied about we're going to protest. Okay, then what? They're still sitting on their pile of money laughing at you. They don't care. They don't care at all. If there's no actual negative repercussions to them, why would they ever do anything different? Why do you think they're not just going to do it again next time? They're going to do it again next time, and the time after that, and the time after that, until there is actually repercussions, until there are actually negative consequences to the people who did it. And I don't mean, we're going to have a press conference and then he's going to be fired from his government job. Oh, poor him. Now he'll have to go sit on his $1 billion cackling while unemployed, like he gives a crap. Like that was part of the plan. They didn't care. And so I'm not even saying what should be done in this case, but I think it's important for people to know, like when you're dealing with sociopaths, the incentives and disincentives are the same as they would be for like a rabid dog or something. You can't appeal to their conscience. They don't care. And even among a lot of the doctors and stuff that I saw who actually dared to come out and say, this is false, that's false, we shouldn't be doing this, shutdowns are going to be way more destructive than they are helpful, we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't do that. Even most of them, now this may be sort of tactical and being like politically careful, or, but even most of them talk as if this policy is very misguided. No, it isn't. Misguided means they tried something that doesn't match their goal. They did exactly what matches their goal, which doesn't give a shit about you or your life or your children or whether your children are tortured or murdered. They don't care about that at all. They got power, they got money, that was their goal. It wasn't misguided at all. That was their goal, and they achieved it. And they achieved it by shutting down people who pointed out they were lying. And they achieved it through government thuggery. That's what they do. That's who they are. So you can complain, and in the future, well, we need more oversight. Into oversight by who? The people they just paid off? Who all, jumped in line to get their money by parroting the establishment bullshit? You think the sociopaths are going to keep themselves in line? It's not how reality works. Maybe read a history book. But for people to change anything, they at least have to acknowledge how reality works. And in the real world, the people capable of what you just saw happen, and like up in Canada, the ridiculous things of, oh, you protested us shutting down and destroying lives, so we're just going to lock down your bank accounts. But that's another thing, is later the courts rule, hey, you weren't allowed to do that. And same thing down here. The federal courts ruled, yeah, the mask mandate, CDC never had any authority of the sort to require anything of anybody. They just made that up. Okay, the courts have spoken. They already got their money. So when government does something unconstitutional and all the politicians and the big corporations get their piles of money and then they say, you weren't supposed to do that. So, do they give the money back? Nope. Do they suffer any adverse consequences? Nope. To have a court ruling, you weren't supposed to do that. Yeah, but they did it, and they benefited, and they kept the benefit after you said they weren't supposed to do that. Why won't they do it again? They will. Until the people make it not worth it for them to do it by making actual negative repercussions from being sociopathic bastards. And that, like a lot of things, depends entirely on the mentality of the people. And when the people stop imagining that authority is real. Because if anybody else did that without the guise of authority and just said, we're gonna point guns at you and make you not go to work and say it's for somebody's health or some such crap. If anybody without the veil of authority did that, you'd say, screw you, and I'm going to shoot you if you don't get out of my way, on my way to work. But government does it, and people think, well, we're going to protest and ask for legislation and ask for oversight and reform and a whole bunch of bullshit that's never going to do anything and never has, because you're still begging the sociopaths to put limits on their sociopathy. They don't do that. And this is one of the most glaring examples of why the Constitution is worthless shit. They did it. They did it. People suffered. They then declared that they weren't allowed to do it. And they kept what they got from doing it. So what the hell does that mean? It's like if I came over and stole your car and then came over the next day and said, well, I carefully reconsidered and I determined that I really was not right to take your car. But I'm not giving it back. Fuck you. I'm keeping your car. That's what they did. That's what they did in Canada. It's what they did in the US. They did the damage. Then they had a ruling that said they weren't allowed to do what did the damage. They're not going to undo it. All the Constitution did was give them a way to put on a show to pretend they give a shit. Well, now we have a court ruling that says we weren't supposed to do what we did, but we're keeping all the money and all the power and all that. And by the way, we'd do it again next time. And then we may or may not have another court ruling that said, oh, we weren't supposed to do that either. They don't care until they have something to lose personally. The sociopaths in power don't care what you think or how you vote or how much you whine or how much you protest. Until they have something to lose personally, they will keep acting as sociopaths.